Yo, what's up guys, and welcome back to Top 5 Daily. Today we'll be counting down the top 5 events that changed the world forever, and this list will contain events that shaped the world to where it is today, whether it had a positive or negative effect. If you guys have a different list, be sure to leave them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to read them. But that said guys, let's try and reach 1 like in the video. If we reach, that'll be absolutely crazy though. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Number 5. 9/11. On September the 11th, 2001, 4 terrorist attacks were set out by the Islamic terrorist group known as Al-Qaeda. 2 of these terrorist attacks had struck the northern and southern towers of the World Trade Center, resulting in the collapse of both the towers. The 3rd and 4th attacks struck the western side of the Pentagon, killing all 64 on board and 125 within the Pentagon itself. The other plane crashed into a field near the Diamond T, also killing everyone on board. The series of attacks resulted in the deaths of 3,000 people and over 6,000 more injured, and causing over $10 billion in damages, with an additional $3 trillion in total costs. The result of 9/11 led to drastic changes in immigration policies and airports, enforcing new laws in hopes to reduce the risk of future terrorist attacks. 9/11 was a day that would never be forgotten and was marked as one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in modern history. Number 4. The Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis, which was also known as the October Crisis, was an encounter between the US and the Soviet Union regarding the Soviet ballistic missile deployment in Cuba. This particular event was as close as it came to an almost all-out nuclear war. During the 1962 midterm elections in the United States, a U-2 spy plane had spotted missile preparations, which resulted in the establishment of a military barricade in order to stop any missiles in future from entering Cuba. An agreement was arranged between JFK and Khrushchev. I completely butchered that name probably, but anyway, after negotiations. The Soviets would later disassemble their weaponry in Cuba and return home to the Soviet Union as per the United Nations request, in an arrangement for the US public declaration to never invade Cuba again without proper justification. Number 3. The Black Death. So the Black Death was one of the most destructive phenomena to happen in our human history, and the virus had really started to peak between 1346 and 1353, and it was essentially a plague that was carried by oriental rat fleas that were living on the black rats, which were on board many merchant ships at the time, and it was thought to have originated from Central Asia, which would eventually spread to Europe. The plague had estimated to kill between 75 and 200 million people, which was between 30 to 60% of Europe's entire population, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's such a huge amount. But the plague started large-scale problems for both society and the economy that were affected by this pandemic, which would lead people to abandon their friends and family, and they would even eventually flee from their own cities. The economy went through a severe inflation, causing local and imported goods to escalate massively. Number 2. World War I. So World War I was a global war which lasted between the 28th of July 1914 to the 11th of November 1918. More than 70 million soldiers fought during the war to end all wars, and the war resulted in the Allied victory and the end of the German, Russian, Ottoman, and Austro-Hungarian empires. The war had also led to the casualties of both military personnel and civilians, which 38 million were affected, 17 million of which were killed during the war. The war led to great economical changes in the United States, and America's factories and countrysides were barely even scathed. In fact, they were operating at its best after the war. The effect of the World War had actually sped up the American production, which would later lead to an economic boom in the 1920s. World War I also laid the framework for the events that caused the Second World War. Number 1. The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is probably the reason why you're watching this video right now, but anyway, it was a period of time that began in Great Britain in the middle of the 18th century that really influenced the changes to the way technologies were made by instead using machines and larger factories to manufacture products in larger quantities rather than having them handmade. The Industrial Revolution provided a whole range of job opportunities which led to many leaving their lives as agriculturists to move to urban areas where they would be offered more for their work. But with the revolution came some great problems though. Living standards and costs had risen, causing the less fortunate to enter a time of poverty, leading to starvation and panic. The Industrial Revolution had both changed the world entirely through both its positive and negative effects. So that about wraps it up for today's top 5. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe for more daily top 5s. If you guys have a suggestion for what the next top 5 should be sure to leave them down in the comments below and I'll be sure to read them. But with that said guys, I'll catch you guys later.